For background, I, 28 years old female, have been estranged from my father, 63 years old male, and his family since I was 10. He left us for his mistress and went to Canada. Ever since then, my mom single-handedly raised me and my little sister. I worked hard from a young age and was able to get a scholarship at a very good university in New York. I developed softwares and now live very comfortably. Around mid-2018, Male, my grandmother from my father's side, approached my mother because they were struggling financially with their house. Apparently, my grandmother's sister, who was handling her retirement money, did not pay the remaining mortgage and the bank is foreclosing the property. My mom, being the kind-hearted lady she is, asked me to purchase the foreclosed property to help my grandmother and my aunt, who lives with her along with her 2 kids. I didn't want to help them because all of them enabled my father's affair, so from a young age I chose not to have any relationship with them. But I gave in to my mother, who said that, no matter what happened before, your grandmother is old and needs help. And I thought it would be healthy for me to let go of the grudge I've held over my father's family and start a new chapter. A few weeks after I purchased the house, my aunt kept asking me for help with her 2 kids' tuition fees. My grandmother would also call me every day to ask for an allowance. They would even call me at 2 a.m., not caring about the time difference, because they desperately needed money. If they couldn't reach me, they would hound my mother instead. It all went downhill when my sister called me crying because she said that aunt took her new phone from her room when they visited and sold it online because she needed money for her kids' field trip. My aunt justified her actions by telling her that her rich sister could buy her a new one. My sister had bought that phone herself by saving her school allowance, and she was proud that she bought something on her own. After hearing that, I called my aunt to tell her that she either returns my sister's phone or she can pack up her things and leave the house that I bought. My grandmother chimed in, saying that they wouldn't have done what they did to my sister if I had picked up the phone once in a while and helped them. She accused me of being selfish and stingy when I have so much. I told her to leave with her daughter too. I asked a friend to serve them an eviction notice since I'm not in the country. When they didn't comply, I asked the same friend who owns a demolition company to wait until they left the house, pack up their belongings, and tear the house down. By the time they came back, there wasn't a roof anymore, and one of the walls was knocked down. When my mother found out what I did, she cried and said that what I did was wrong and that I should have taken the high road since we could have bought my sister a new phone. I've heard the same sentiments from my mom's side of the family too. So, am I the idiot? Edit, thank you so much for all of your support. I posted this story because of a conversation I had with my boyfriend. He has an uncle who is dealing with squatters in a rental property in Florida. I told him what I did to deal with squatters, and he told me it's an a whole move. I've shown him all the responses, and he reevaluated his past comment. I thought I would clear up a couple of things that were left out in my post. I own the property. It was foreclosed by the bank, and I won the bidding to buy the entirety of the property, not just assuming the mortgage, with interest penalties too, in June of 2018. For those curious, I spent less than $80,000, including legal fees. After I served them the notice of eviction, 15 days to leave, it was followed up by a meeting with the local council. They were trying to find ways to help us find middle ground since we're family. They asked me if I was willing to let them stay if they paid rent, but my aunt told them they refused to pay rent because it's their house and they refused to move. I told the local council that I have the intent to develop and sell the property, which is why I need them out. We escalated it to City Hall and had them serve a notice to vacate. They had 90 days to find another place to live. The eviction notice was in July, and the notice to vacate was in August 2018. The demolition didn't happen until late April of 2019. I still believe I've given them ample time. As for how long they were out of the house to start the demolition work, they were out the whole day. They all went to another town to celebrate a festival. The only time-consuming work was to pack up their things, but the demolition work itself didn't last long, as the house was made mostly of plywood, timber, and the roof was made of corrugated metal sheet. As for my mom and my sister, they now live in the capital of my home country. I managed to settle them in a gated community, and they are far from our little province. They are in no contact with my father's side of the family. My mom was mad at my aunt for stealing my sister's phone, but upset that I made my elderly grandmother homeless along with my cousins aged 9 and 12. It's a small province, and everyone in the community knew what I did, and in their eyes, I'm the a-hole. I came from a country that respects their elders, especially if they are your family, even if they're out of line. I really did try to have a relationship with my grandmother. While the bidding was happening for the property, I paid for her medications, doctor visits, and I did give her, my aunt, and their kids some allowance money. I even gave them a whole package of US goodies. But after the purchase happened, they were constantly asking for more. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. The story is always about how tough it is to evict, but demolishing the home after they started harassing you and your family's generosity, stealing from your sister, and justifying it is epic. Your mother is wrong. If you tried to ignore this, it would never have stopped. Why didn't your grandmother reach out to your father, her son, to help? Comment 2. Your grandmother and your aunt thought they had an ATM. You owe them nothing. Your mother pressured you to save their house, which you did. They are ungrateful for the help you gave them. They were never going to stop haranguing you for money, not the idiot. Now, for the update. Thanks for the support on my last post. Things have only gotten more intense since then. After the demolition, I thought I'd finally wash my hands of my father's family. But life has a way of throwing curveballs. My aunt, the one who stole my sister's phone, somehow got my number again. She called crying, begging for forgiveness. She said her son, my cousin, was seriously ill and needed surgery. My heart sank. I didn't want to be involved, but I couldn't ignore a kid in trouble. I agreed to pay for the surgery, but I made it clear this was a one-time deal. I transferred the money directly to the hospital. I thought that was the end of it, but then a few weeks later, I found out through a family friend that there was no surgery. My aunt had lied, using her son's health to manipulate me into giving her money. I was livid. I felt like a fool, and that was the last straw. I called her and told her we were done. I blocked her number and anyone else related to that side of the family. I couldn't believe I'd let myself be tricked after everything. But the drama didn't stop there. My grandmother, who I'd evicted along with my aunt, fell ill. The community blamed me, saying the stress of losing her home had caused it. I was the talk of the town, the heartless granddaughter who'd turned her back on her family. I didn't know what to believe anymore. Was I really at fault here? Then out of nowhere, my father reached out. He'd heard about everything and wanted to make things right. He offered to buy a new house for my grandmother and aunt. I was skeptical, but he actually followed through. I heard they moved in last month. I didn't want anything to do with it, but at least they weren't my problem anymore. My mom and sister were relieved. They didn't want to see our family on the streets, but they also supported my decision to cut ties. It's been interesting to say the least, and I'm just trying to find some peace after all this chaos. Thanks for sticking with me through this saga. My girlfriend's parents forced me to fast for Ramadan and pray, despite my discomfort, so I taught them a lesson in respect. By exposing their hypocrisy to their entire community and watching their perfect reputation crumble. For context, I live in a predominantly Muslim country in Asia, and my 26-year-old male, GF, 26-year-old female, is from a Muslim family. We have been together for almost 2 years now. I was raised as a Christian by my family, but I stopped going to church when I was an early teenager, and I personally am not religious at all anymore, which my parents are fine with as it was my choice. Being raised in a religious environment has negatively shaped how I view religion generally. Main point is that taking part in religious practices of any kind makes me uncomfortable because of my upbringing. My girlfriend is the same as me. She was raised Muslim, but is not religious at all now. There is an understanding about this between her and her parents, but it is unspoken between them as opposed to my situation being very clear with my parents. Her parents are not very strict compared to the standard Muslim family, such as them being fine with us dating, and I can sleep over with her, but only in their house. However, they are still religious, and Ramadan is taken seriously. She does not take part in anything religious, however, she is still expected to fast during Ramadan. We have discussed this several times, and the only reason she fasts is to not upset her parents as she still lives with them. They still have a very parent-child relationship, which is common in Asian Muslim families, so she is very conflict-averse with her parents in general. This leads me to my situation currently. My GF has told me they have asked her privately if I will be fasting this year. They have asked if I would try it for a day to see what it's like. I have made it clear that I am not comfortable with doing this for a few reasons. One reason is what I highlighted above about my religious background, and I feel very uncomfortable being pressured to do something with my own body, such as eating, drinking, which should be your own choice. Another important reason is I feel I need to set a clear boundary now, or they will continue to ask more of me. If I try fasting for a day, they will likely ask me to try it for a week next, and then the whole month eventually. I seriously doubt trying it for a day would be a one-off, and they'll never mention it again. I have communicated this very clearly to my GF, and she does understand my position, but just wants me to do it anyway so I don't upset her parents. For additional context, I would need to convert to Islam to marry my GF in the future, which I am totally fine with doing, as to me it is just a legal technicality for the marriage to be recognized here. Her sibling spouses have also converted, and they are not expected to do anything religious outside of also being pressured into fasting during Ramadan. Things are a bit tense right now with my GF and I, as we can't seem to find a solution. Am I being unreasonable? Or am I right to set this boundary now? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1, not the idiot, it is your choice. However, if you're from Malaysia, the matter of changing religion is not so simple. Changing your religion to Islam means you have to abide by Islamic law, including marriage law, inheritance law, and even how you will be buried when you die. Your children will also be Muslims by law. I am a Muslim, and this is not to scare you, but please make an informed decision. I suggest you talk to other converts and truly do your research before you decide to get married. Comment 2. Dude, if you're thinking of marrying a Muslim and you can't face one day of skipping lunch to please her parents, I highly recommend you bail now. You're not the idiot, but you're being naive about your future if you won't swallow your pride long enough to show a bit of respect, actually. Butt kissing and fast for one day. Don't men have to get circumcised to convert to Islam as well? I assume you already are. Otherwise, you'd presumably be freaking out about this too. Now, for the update, thanks for sticking around to hear more of this mess. So the other day, my girlfriend's parents dropped a bomb on us. They said they'd been thinking, and they decided it's time I start joining in on the family prayers during Ramadan. Not just fasting, but the whole 9 yards. I couldn't believe it. My girlfriend looked like she wanted to disappear right there. I could see the panic in her eyes, but she didn't say a word. I tried to keep my cool, but inside I was fuming. I reminded them as politely as I could that I wasn't comfortable with participating in religious practices. They nodded, but I could tell they weren't happy. It was like they were testing me, seeing how far they could push before I'd cave. The next day, my girlfriend and I had a huge fight. She said I was being stubborn and making things difficult with her family. She didn't get why I couldn't just go through the motions to keep the peace. I told her it felt wrong, like I'd be lying to everyone, including myself. She stormed out, and I was left feeling like the bad guy. But then things took a turn for the worse. Her younger brother, who's always been a bit of a hothead, confronted me. He accused me of disrespecting their traditions and causing trouble in the family. Before I knew it, we were in a full-blown shouting match in the middle of the street. Neighbors were peeking through their curtains. It was a scene straight out of a soap opera. I thought that was as bad as it could get, but I was wrong. The next day, my girlfriend's parents sat us both down. They said they'd been talking and they'd come to a decision. If I wasn't willing to fully embrace their way of life, including the religious aspects, then I wasn't the right man for their daughter. They gave us an ultimatum. I either start participating in prayers and fasting, or we break up. I was stunned. My girlfriend was in tears. She begged her parents to reconsider, but they were adamant. It was like they'd turned into completely different people overnight. I couldn't understand how they'd gone from being relatively open-minded to this. That night, my girlfriend came to my place. She was a mess. She said she couldn't lose me, but she couldn't stand up to her parents either. She felt trapped. And then she did something I never expected. She told me she'd been lying about her own beliefs. She wasn't as non-religious as she'd made out. She'd been keeping up appearances for me, afraid I'd leave her if I knew the truth. I didn't know what to say. I felt betrayed. But at the same time, I understood why she did it. She was scared, just like I was. We were both trying to navigate this minefield without blowing everything up. In the end, I did something I never thought I'd do. I agreed to join in on the prayers, just for Ramadan. I felt weak, desperate even, but I couldn't lose her. I told myself it was just for a short while, that it didn't change who I was. But deep down, I knew I was compromising a part of myself for her. The aftermath was awkward. Her parents were pleased, but I could tell they were still wary of me. My girlfriend was relieved, but there was a new tension between us. We were both pretending, putting on a show for her family. It was like we were actors in our own lives, and I hated it. And then, as if things couldn't get any more complicated, her ex showed up out of the blue. He'd heard about the drama and wanted to offer his support to her. It was clear he was trying to worm his way back into her life, playing the role of the understanding, religiously compatible guy. I saw red. It was one thing after another, and I was at my breaking point. I confronted him, told him to back off. He just smirked, said he was just being a good Muslim, looking out for a sister in faith. That's when I lost it. I punched him. It was a stupid move, I know. It only made things worse. Her parents saw it as proof that I was too volatile, not right for their daughter. So here we are a few days later. My girlfriend and I are still together, but everything's changed. I'm joining in on prayers, feeling like a fraud. Her ex is circling like a vulture, and her parents are watching me like a hawk. I'm trying to hold on, but I don't know how much longer I can keep this up. Thanks for listening to my rant. My boyfriend criticized the apartment I loved, but when I found out he sold his car to help me buy it, I made sure his parents' debts were paid and showed him what true support looks like. I, 30-year-old female, and my boyfriend, 28-year-old male, have been together for 3 years. I recently found an apartment that I liked, and as my parents sold their old house last year, they had some spare cash in the bank and decided to loan me the cash to buy the place, so I wouldn't need to get bank financing. Just for context, my boyfriend had never shown any interest in my house hunting expedition. I never asked him why, but I assume he sees it as none of his business, as it's not his money. I just started the purchase process, but the property isn't mine yet. A couple of days ago, I brought up the topic of moving in. For context, my boyfriend is not moving in with me, so he asked how long the sale process will take. I said because it's a cash purchase, it will not take as long as if I was getting a bank loan. He then joked about how nice it was to buy a property worth EVICT in cash, but then said I wouldn't do it. For context, I'm sure his parents could afford to do the same for him if they wanted to. He said that he would rather invest that cash elsewhere than to use it to buy a property as it would generate more returns. But it's totally fine if that's what my parents want. Today after lunch, I asked if we could swing by my future place to take a loop around the apartment complex, as I hadn't taken that route from that location before. My boyfriend has never seen the place. When we arrived, I showed him which apartment block it was, and he commented that it was so near the road, not supposed to be a good thing. That was his only comment about it. As we were leaving the area, I saw a billboard by the property developer which called the area the most coveted address in the country. I pointed it out in a half-mocking, skeptic tone, not sure how to describe how I said it. While I did think it was a nice area, I did not think it was in fact the most coveted in town. My boyfriend then said, I don't want to live here. I told him that's not very nice and started to feel upset, so I went silent. After a while, he asked me whether I was okay, and I said I was upset. He asked why, and I told him that I felt he wasn't very supportive of my new place, and it was rude to make such a comment about my future living place. I also mentioned what he said about making the purchase in cash, because the initial way he said it felt judgmental, even though he did have a good reason for not agreeing with the financial decision. He got quite angry, said it was just his opinion and didn't know why I took it personally, and said, okay, I won't state my opinion anymore then. I said that you wouldn't go to someone's house, look around, and tell them that you wouldn't stay there, even if you did feel that way, because that's just objectively rude. He scoffed and challenged me to a bet by asking someone else if they thought the same. So I decided to come on here and ask the good people of Am I the Idiot? Am I the idiot for feeling what he said was rude and getting upset? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1, you're not the idiot. My boyfriend had never shown any interest in my house hunting expedition. I find that weird. In your shoes, I would wonder if he either wants to give zero input so he can freely criticize your choice, or he doesn't see a future with you. My boyfriend then said, I don't want to live here. Well, that's good. Who asked him to? He got quite angry, said it was just his opinion and didn't know why I took it personally. So he can state his opinion, and if you state your opinion about what he said, he has a little hissy fit. How very mature of him. He scoffed and challenged me to a bet by asking someone else if they thought the same. I hope you can convince him to post his viewpoint here. It would be entertaining to see all the different ways posters call him the AH. Comment 2. Sounds to me like he's angling to be dumped. If the idea of moving in together was on the table, why wasn't he more interested in your purchase? Telling you he doesn't want to live there means he's not keen to move in. So what's the plan then? And saying he could have invested the money more effectively. Frick off with that shoot. Coulda, woulda, shoulda. Finally, the fine, I won't state my opinion then, is so passive-aggressive. He's acting like a child. I agree with others that he is jealous of your ability to purchase an apartment. Instead of talking about it, he's making little digs at you. He's resentful. Now, for the update. Thanks for sticking around for the update. So things got hectic after my last post. Remember how my boyfriend was all weird about my new place? Well, turns out he had a reason. His parents, who could easily drop cash on a place like mine, were actually in deep financial trouble. They'd been living a lie, all smoke and mirrors. My boyfriend knew and didn't tell me. He was ashamed, I guess. Then my parents, who were helping me with the apartment, got into a huge fight with my aunt. She claimed they owed her money from years ago. Something about a family business deal gone wrong. It was a mess. Lawyers got involved, and suddenly the money from my apartment was frozen. I was freaking out, thinking I'd lose the place. But here's where it gets crazier. My boyfriend, feeling guilty about his secret and the mess with my family, did something unexpected. He sold his car, a sweet ride he loved more than anything, and gave me the money to secure the apartment. I couldn't believe it. I was mad he kept secrets, but touched by his gesture. Just when I thought we could breathe, my ex-best friend, who I hadn't spoken to in years, showed up out of nowhere. She was the new girlfriend of the property developer selling me the apartment. She tried to sabotage the sale, spreading rumors that I was broke and couldn't afford it. She wanted the place for herself. I had to prove her wrong. I gathered all my financial statements, showed the developer that I had the funds, thanks to my boyfriend's sacrifice, and the sale went through. My ex-friend was livid, but I got my apartment. After moving in, things settled down for a bit. But then my boyfriend's parents' situation got worse. They were going bankrupt. My boyfriend was devastated. He started working 2 jobs to help them out. I felt bad for resenting him earlier. He was just trying to protect his parents' pride. And just when we thought we'd seen it all, my aunt dropped a lawsuit against my parents. Turns out she was diagnosed with a serious illness and wanted to make amends. She apologized for the chaos and admitted there was no debt. My parents were relieved, and so was I. The money was no longer tied up, and I could pay my boyfriend back. Life's been pretty up and down, but we're getting through it. My boyfriend and I are stronger than ever, and my apartment is finally feeling like home. Thanks for reading. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.